correspondence, applications, and purchase orders, as our first appointment isn't until 7:30. The first thing I wanted to cover was this, well, I guess that was at the end, but I'd like to cover it now. Cindy was able to get a quote for health insurance that would save the town about $50,000. As always, that's not always an apples to apples comparison.
Yep.
And what I kind of thought of as an idea for her to suss it out was to send it to the department heads. And pretty much everybody knows who in their department is someone who really tracks this stuff and watches it. So she was able to get a printout of all the things that are offered, and there's also a physician's directory that can be shared. So I would think we send that to the department heads, just have them review it with the people and get back to us in 2 weeks and let us know if we want to press forward with that.
I think that's a great idea.
But that way it's fair, where there's no surprises on what's new, and if someone has a major problem that's really going to cause them some issues, then we can go from there.
Do we know anyone in the community that's a healthcare specialist that might be willing to take a look at the program for us? I mean, I know you can always pay consultants, but I didn't know whether we had anyone in the community that would.
So what this is,
HR person or something like that.
what this is Primex. This is the smaller
Version.
competition to them.
Yeah.
New Hampshire Interlocal Trust. I think, as Cindy was explaining it to me, I think this is probably, unless there's a glaring error, unless someone's really going to have a problem from this,
Yeah.
I think this is probably the better way to go. But it's really going to come down to individuals, how it affects them. I mean,
Or how many of them?
on paper, it's, you know, it's a direct comparison right on here. Much like the political flyers you get where everybody's opposed to something and for another thing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think it just comes down to the individuals if there are problems with it.
'Cause she had a comment, I thought, at one point where they weren't good. The second year was going to be where they spike up the cost. You know, they lower the price. She made a comment, something like
That was a
that.
comment from Health Trust.
Oh, was Health Trust
I think
was?
she asked them about, I don't know, it's in an email, which I added to your.
Oh, yeah, here it is.
Yeah.
So what they have currently is Health Trust, Anthem, Blue Cross, Blue Shield, and then this proposed one is Harvard Pilgrim.
Her comment and Cindy's is lastly, the thing I hear most from groups that have returned to Health Trust after moving to NHIT is the significant increases they receive on their first renewal. So, but I mean, I don't know that that's true. I mean, I can't, you know, that may be true, but I think your approach, Phil, is the right way. Let the employees, let the department heads check with the employees, see if it's feasible, and let's give it a try. At least for 1 year, we'd save 50 grand. Nothing else.
Okay, well, if there's no objection, then we'll proceed with that and give them a deadline of 2 weeks. Sorry, we don't really have anything to cover in the 5 minutes before your appointment, so we're just signing stuff. Which still has to happen in this meeting, so why not now?
We realize there's more to your meeting than just.
Just
Thank
didn't
you.
want to be rude, just sitting here ignoring you.
So when we sign these forms on the update on the current use, for those land pieces that come out of current use,
Yep.
how does that representative from KRT know to pick that up for the tax rolls?
We had to, and I asked him, I said, from here on, are we supposed to make sure and give these to you, or are you gonna pick them up because of the building permits? And he said, well, we can do it both ways. So, we feel like we better if we see them, and make sure he gets it. Those were, there's a full string of them because of that.
And when does that, yeah, there's 5 or 6 of them.
Yeah.
When does their contract end? Or up for renewal, I should say.
KRT, I think we got them on a 5-year.
5-year plan?
Pretty sure it's, yeah, it's the 5th year is the.
I think it's 3. I'm almost positive that we can't sign a contract for more than 3 years.
Oh, well, that could be. I thought the cyclical business, I thought, how often do we revalue? Is it 5 years or 3 years?
I think there's an option for renewal, but do you remember that?
On KRT, on the land assessors, tax
I
assessors.
thought it was only a 3-year contract.
How long was our contract with them before we have to renew?
I can check if you want me to.
Because we'll want an RFP on that one as soon as we can.
I'll check.
Okay, just if when you get a minute.
It's right down in my file, but I don't want to miss anything exciting here.
Do you know if Rich St. Hilaire went out there to check out that?
I don't know,
property?
I've been twice and no one was home either time.
Okay.
So,
Is that on that driveway?
No, it's the intent to cut.
Oh, I don't know that. We haven't, I didn't sign that for that specific reason. I not heard from Rich on that one.
So, in reference to Paul Butler's request, I will research that, or if we approve it, I will just notify our insurance carrier.
I'm pretty sure we approved that last week on the Recreation Commission for the sip and paint.
Yes, we did.
We did approve it, Chief.
Okay.
So it's just a matter if you can verify any procedures with the
that's
insurance.
what I told him, call chief, verify the process and
Correct, and that, we would not be providing any alcohol for that. They could bring their own.
But you'll notify,
They could bring their own if they
and I'll
want.
notify our insurance carrier.
Yes, please, yeah.
right. It says, everything says, it's residence.
Okay, 7:30. Our first appointment is with Tormeo Industries and the Jericho Road residents. Don, I'll turn this over to you.
Sure, so I did make some calls to both New Hampshire DES, and there was a couple of divisions I spoke to there. So I think that Tormeos are regulated by the state, and we're looking into the part about the town regulations and what have you. They're also regulated by the EPA as well, EPA and the state DES. And they're regulated by MIOSHA, Mine and Safety and Health, Mine Safety and Health, similar to OSHA. So those are three organizations that they're regulated by right now. We're checking into some things with the town based upon our ordinances as well. Going to turn it over to legal, have them give us an opinion. So that's about all I have at this time. We did go out there. I went out twice, and Dennis Quintel went out with me. And Dennis has filed a report as well. I don't know if you have any folder or not.
Yeah, it's there.
And so they've agreed to stop blasting on the north face, is that correct? And I also spoke with Main Drilling and Blasting and asked them to stop blasting on the north face until this issue is resolved. And they agreed to do so likewise. And I was mistaken that they're not, the blasters are not governed by the Fire Marshal's Office and the Hampshire State Police. And I spoke to the gentleman that is in charge of the blast, of the unit for the blasting. And spoke with him quite a bit the other day. So those are the people that regulate what Mr. Toromeo does down there. So Dennis and I had a nice meeting with them on Friday, and they agreed not to continue until this issue is resolved. That's my understanding. So that's what I have to report. I did take some photos. We've been given permission to go there anytime and to take photos. Dennis and I have been there, like I said. I've been there twice, and Dennis has been there once. Any questions or concerns? Or do you want to open it up? Or? Did you?
The only thing I was going to say, we still need to figure out what the ordinances are as far as place away from borders and property lines and that. My only concern, I would say to Mr., you're the grandson, is it? The residents came out last week and voiced their concern, and I stated I've never heard any of them ever complain about it or anything else, so something must have been going on. Then you saw it on TV, you came down, and you assured us you would look into it and take care of things. I was very disturbed to hear something within 2 days that you're doing work again over there. I would just ask that, I would hope we can have a neutral zone where we can figure out what's going on and not do any work within the property line, because like I said, the residents just came, and you came and talked to us and gave us your word, and everything else, and then the next day there was some earth being moved in that area. Not blasting or anything, but it's just causing a lot of angst among your neighbors, and I would think you'd want to be a good neighbor as well, considering I've never heard them complain before this. So that's my only thing. I don't think we can do anything until we establish through legal what the boundary markers and everything else are, but I would just hope, for the sake of your neighbors, you would stay away from that area right now until we can figure out what's going on.
That's Mr. Torman.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
My only comments, there's two issues here. There's the blasting within the 500 feet, and there's also the buffer of 200 feet that they're working within. So we're looking at both of those.
Do you have documents that would show us anything there? Either, no? Okay.
Okay, well, that segues nicely into the public comment portion of the evening, so I welcome any of the residents one at a time. I would ask, please direct your questions and comments to the board, and you have 2 minutes to address the board at this time.
So last week we were here, and before we left,
we were under the impression that you guys were going to, Chief Briggs specifically, was gonna go and call the fire chief, talk with the fire chief, speak with the fire marshal, and because they broke the buffer zone, that you were going to stop them from doing any work within that buffer zone. And that was what was discussed. As soon as we left, a gentleman walked in, and the first thing he came over and tried to do is deny that he was within the 500-foot boundary. 500, not 200, 500. Okay, it took him about 5 minutes before he agreed that he did break the buffer. 500. The buffer is within 2,500 feet. Okay, the edge of the wall was about 200 feet away from my property. That last blast that they blasted, which was the day before he came in here, he also said that him and his grandfather were going to hire an engineer to come in to see what can they do to restore the buffer. At the same time, that same day or the day before, they just did a blast and cut short that buffer zone by 50 feet. One blast, okay? I'm not gonna say anything. All I'm saying is that those extra days that they have and they continue to work, okay? All they need now is one more day of free to do whatever you want, and they'll be right at my wall. I truly believe that their intention is not to restore anything. Their intention at the end is like, okay, we broke the buffer, I'm gonna pay the fine. Because there will be no more land to put a buffer there, okay? Right now, even if you stop them from doing any blasting at that wall, that's perfectly fine. But at the edge of my property, okay, they have a big dozer parked, which is, I can't go there because right after we had the meeting, they put posts on every single tree that is right on my wall, okay? But there's machines there that way within the buffer, okay? So that means they are still working at the present time within the buffer zone, okay? Shame on me, shame on the town, shame on whoever gave them permission to do all this work for the last how many years, because they broke all those rules more than 3 years ago. Okay, and the only reason now we know that is because they came so close to my house, within 50 feet, within 60, 75 feet, okay? And Mr. Tormeo himself told me that he could actually blast, if he wants to, 10 feet away from my property line. Okay, that's his words to me when I called and asked him what his plans was. He also, when I called last week to check to see how come I did not receive a phone call from the blasting company, I made a mistake. I thought that his company was supposed to call. He told me that not to worry, that he was gonna take care of me. I don't know what that means, but that made me feel very uncomfortable. Okay, all I'm saying is we are dealing with something that is very, very serious right now. Okay, I truly believe that there needs to be something in stone put together to stop them from coming any closer to my house. When Mr. Briggs told me that he was taking the engineer, he told the board that the only way he could do something is take the engineer down there. This way he could take measurements. Did the engineer take any measurements?
I don't believe he did.
Huh?
I don't believe he did.
Right, so him going down there is just like us taking more pictures and sending them to you. If there's nothing documented, okay, we are not moving forward here at all. We just I'll do this and I'll do that, and I promise you I'll do this, and I promise you I'll stop. So to me, that's like, it has no value at this time, because so far I haven't really seen any action, okay? And I'm begging you guys again, okay, to do something about the situation, because so far nothing has been done. Like I said, I left here last week thinking that something was gonna take place, but nothing did take place.
Has there been a blast since our meeting last week?
Has been any blasting? No, sir, no, there's no blasting.
Okay, so that was an agreement that we reached with Mr. Tormeo, and what is going on right now is this is not two neighbors having an argument. This is someone who's regulated by a completely different organization that we haven't run into before. So typically, when there's two neighbors having an argument, we say, well, that's a civil matter and we don't get involved.
Right.
This is not that case, but the town needs to get legal representation in this and get legal interpretation of where things stand. And that's not something that the people sitting around this table can do.
Okay.
That is something a lawyer representing the town has to do.
Okay.
And so that's what is gonna happen.
Okay, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear what Mr. Briggs says when I was sitting there. So I don't know what is the next step from here. All I heard that he agreed or to stop.
Yeah, we're awaiting word back from our council on this because it is a very complicated issue. As he said, there's multiple organizations involved and there's multiple regulations dealing with this specific area. So it's not a cut and dry thing that's black and white where the town can just do something, because he would be within his rights, if we were wrong, to come after us.
Okay,
So what the town needs to do is figure out what the facts are in the situation legally. And that's what we're waiting, is word back from our council.
okay. But we have established though that there is a minimum of 200-foot buffer from your neighbor.
Again, there are many regulations that contradict each other on this. And so there needs to be a legal professional who reviews them and tells us what is the overriding one.
Okay,
So that's what we're waiting on. There is a report filed by Dennis Quintel.
there's what?
There is a report filed by Dennis Quintel. to the
Town
board.
engineer.
Do you have it?
And what that did is that documents the current conditions as they sit.
Mr. Baratheon, let's give you a copy of that letter.
So that's the report that Dennis Quintel filed.
That's step one. That's step one.
Pictures in the back too.
If I give you my copy of...
If you would like to.
So those are some of the RSAs that we are working with right there.
And yeah, these are different regulations, and you'll see it kind of contradicts each other. I apologize, I only have that one, you can share it with them.
Okay.
You can go online and print additional copies right off our website of these ordinances. And the problem is, in one way, Mr. Toromeo and that his business has been in existence longer than some of the regulations. And that's why there are conflicting regulations internal to the town. And it varies, like fire marshal has a piece of it, DES has a piece of it, and EPA has a piece of it from different perspectives based on the variety of tasks performed at the Taramio site. So we're not trying to avoid the issue, we're trying to clarify it, and that may not take a week. It may take more than a week to do that.
Because it doesn't do anybody any good if we go and do something that's completely wrong and it's unfair to them or it's unfair to you. We need to do what's legally right. And they have agreed to stop blasting and hopefully any further work until we can establish what the rule is. And I think that benefits everybody sitting in this room. If we know what the rules are, it helps to play the game fairly for everyone.
So they agreed on stop blasting just by telling you we'll stop blasting?
No. I mean, we cannot dictate to them to stop blasting. We have to file a complaint with the state. They would call for a hearing with the subcontractor for him, and then they would have a hearing on it.
Okay.
When that would happen in this day and age, who knows? So what we're trying to do is just get them to, until we can sort this out and find out what the legal standing is on it, to stop doing any work over there, or stop doing any blasting over
On the
there.
north.
So that the situation that you're concerned about, where there is nothing left, doesn't take place. So at least there'll be no more rock blown off the wall there. That stops, right? We agreed to that? And so, until we get all this sorted out, they're not gonna do that, and we're not ignoring the problem, we're not disregarding your concerns. They are very valid, and I think everybody here, as you recall, was pretty animated about it last week and didn't like that. But the facts and the law are the two things that we can't just ignore. So we need to get all that sorted out, and then we'll proceed.
Okay. Thank you.
So RSA 155E2 is the one that the town would be regulating with, as well as ordinances. So this document that Kevin gave you.
Yeah,
You got 2 copies here now, so if you want to share with you.
So what we're looking at is 155E2 plus local regulations or ordinances.
On the buffers, that's all included, but there's, like you said, they're conflicting depending on when they were put into place. So we're trying to get that sorted out to address your concerns and still respect Mr. Torremere's right to continue to do business that he's done for 40-plus years. So there's got to be a happy medium, and that's what we're trying to find that's comfortable for both sides.
And that's a copy of the report that Dennis Quintel filed with us.
Okay. Yeah.
Even though he didn't have a measuring tape, he had some suggestions to at least settle down, stop them making it any worse, and then we move forward.
Okay.
I hear your concern, but we got.
I don't think, excuse me, I don't think anyone is disagreeing that he's within 500 feet of the buffer. I don't even think they are. In other words, everybody agrees they're within 500 feet.
25 feet.
I'm sorry.
25 feet.
Well, that's within 500.
Huh?
that's within 500.
Yeah.
Right.
So our ordinance says within, it's supposed to be 500 feet out. Nobody's disagreeing that it's in there somewhere. And just, if we regulate it, then we move forward from there. They've agreed to work with the town to stop blasting on the north wall. That was the agreement, the north wall. And main drilling and blasting won't blast on the north wall, which abuts all of the neighbors. The only thing, if you can read that right now, so if you have any questions on Dennis's thing, he's requested that they do certain things. So there was rock hanging out that was dangerous. He requested them to remove that rock on that wall. So you may see them there removing rock from that wall. Or you may see them putting dirt up on top of there to create a wall of dirt. I mean, that's some of the things we spoke about.
But that has to be safe. You can't just leave things hanging in midair and not expect the rock to come down, let's say. It's gotta be done right, whatever we do, or whatever they do.
The safety issues.
Right.
Yeah, so
It's safety issue, that's correct.
because what will happen if they leave something that's hazardous after they blast, then OSHA or the family to OSHA will come in and fine them. So that was one of the things that we discussed the other day. And you'll see that in that document from Dennis Quintel.
Okay.
So that was addressed.
Okay. Okay. I'm done. I don't know. Thank you.
You're welcome.
My name is Matt Taglieri. This is my wife Sarah. We're residents at 24 Jericho Drive. I wanted to start just, again, understanding the trip that Dennis Quintel took to the site. When we left here, we were talking about getting an assessment from a third party, an objective third party, to take definitive measurements, confirming that was within the 500-foot buffer. Has that been established without actually taking the measurement?
That has.
Okay, so it's a document now that we can rely on.
It is. All parties agree they're within 500 feet.
Okay. Now, I also heard during the meeting that the proposition for a wall of stumps was not a sufficient remedy for this. I mean, since this meeting, a wall has gone up. Maybe it's a safety wall, I'm not sure, but a wall has been made with equipment. after they were told not to use equipment in that area.
You might want to look at that letter. That's what Dennis Quintel requested they do.
Okay.
There's a copy of this letter.
So what, my understanding was what they immediately did was remove the dangerous rock that was hanging there from the original blast. And Dennis requested that they put a berm on the top so someone couldn't fall off the edge of that. And that he basically said that they were gonna need to put equipment up there to do that safety berm.
Okay. During the meeting last time, it was definitively decided that there was not a signed authorization to cut. 11 minutes after we left, a gentleman walked in with a document in his hand saying he had an authorization, a signed authorization to cut timber. Is that accurate?
That is, we were incorrect about that.
Okay. Do we know who signed that document?
I think we all
We
did.
did. Board of Selectmen did. But I thought there was two of them. We
There
didn't
was
sign the
two.
second.
Second
We signed
one.
the first one, but not the second.
And that was the confusion. So there are numerous intents to cut that come before this board, and later after that meeting, there was a discussion, not specifically because of that, but because in order to get eyes on the property, we have a tree warden that we're tasking to go out and see these things so that the full impact, I mean, 99% of these are just people clearing a house lot. They have to file an intent to cut, and this is how the town tracks the tax money. So what the issue was there was a second permit that was applied for, and that was what we thought we were discussing. There was one that had been done weeks earlier that had been signed, and so they were not in the wrong on that.
Okay. Now, does the authorization to cut timber, does that include more than bramble? Does it include 100-foot trees? Anything on the property?
Essentially, I mean, I've got a copy of one here. I can't give you the one because it's a specific one, but it has basically by species, how many board feet or how many, if they're doing biomass chips or whatever the intent is to use them for. They put estimates of how many board feet they're gonna pull out of an area and how many tons of biomass they'll be pulling out.
Is there a due diligence process to, when an authorization to cut is being requested, to consult the town ordinances and the property lines and determine whether that authorization to cut violates any existing ordinances or property line barriers? Is there any person who's responsible for doing that? I'm trying to understand why this happened in the first place. Had someone done their, well, I don't want to make a presumption, but I would expect if a person was looking at a document saying this is an authorization to cut from here to here, that someone would have said, well, hold on now, that's within that 200-foot buffer. Whose responsibility is it to ensure that they are not cutting beyond, because they're going to claim that they didn't know. So I would expect the town to perhaps know.
Next March on your town warrant, you're gonna see a request from the Board of Selectmen for a code enforcement officer. And that would be the individual that we could charge to do that. We are remiss as a community that we don't have, we do. I mean, we rely on Chief Briggs to help, but we don't have someone that's available to us on a regular basis to follow up. We see that as something that we need to remedy, and that will be on the warrant next year, assuming I can get two other selectmen to agree.
Okay.
But it's actually the owner's responsibility to make sure they're cutting within the guidelines.
That's right.
The owner?
Yeah.
So the cutter? Okay, so they're supposed to know the guidelines then?
Yes.
Okay.
And I
They're
think the
supposed to
whole
know property lines, all
Yeah.
that. So it's no different than a building permit.
The
They're
problem
ultimately responsible for making sure.
stated is interpretation. That's the whole thing this is based on. That's what we're waiting on legal analysis over.
But they've acknowledged being within the 500-foot buffer. So does that mean they did this intentionally?
Well, we're not sure they can't be. That's the point that we're
Okay.
trying to tell you, is that we're waiting on.
They may be able to. They may be able to cut right up to your property line.
Okay.
So if you read 155E2, that's what the
I gave you a
discussion
copy of
is.
it for you.
So the discussion is, and if you read the first part of 155E2, it's a lot to it, but basically, is he exempt from local ordinances and zoning? Based upon, and you have to read the whole ordinance. And so that's why they've agreed to stop the town is having legal look at it, and we'll be able to determine if he's grandfathered in that site to cut closer than 500 feet, if he's exempt from that ordinance.
Okay. So that's the point I was missing, that there's a potential exemption from the ordinance, which we're all basing our,
That's correct.
State law supersedes any local ordinance that we can pass.
So 155E is very confusing, and that's what he'd be regulated under as far as the town is concerned. So state law goes first, town law is created from state law. That's how it goes. So if he's exempt from it, then he's exempt from it. The town's laws will not apply.
okay. Lastly, where this is a verbal agreement to do no further work, blasting on that, is it work or just blasting on that north wall?
Well, it isn't work, because if you read Dennis Quintel's letter, he's requested him to do work
Okay.
within that buffer by putting the dirt buffer in there, right?
Okay.
And to pull rock down where they last blasted.
Okay.
So they have to do work within that 200-foot buffer if they're following what Dennis Quintel has asked them to do.
Okay.
But not
But
blast.
the blasting they have stopped based upon an agreement between the owner and the town. And like I said, I don't think main drilling and blasting is going to blast anyway, based upon my conversation with them.
I said lastly, so in terms of a plan, I know there was an understanding that there'd be a plan developed to plant trees, to mitigate. Is that on hold until this legal matter is resolved?
I would say yes, it is, because when we went down there on Friday, we talked about a wall for buffering the sound. We talked about mounting dirt to buffer and to stop people from falling into the blast area where they just recently blasted. So there are a number of different things that we discussed.
Okay.
And that's, Dennis created that document to the board and to send to them.
I just find it unusual that it was agreed upon by Torromeo to, at least I thought it was, to come up with a plan to plant trees. And now that plan is on hold because, well, I guess it's a legal matter. It just seems strange that they agreed to it and now it's kind of.
Well, he still may be working on a plan. We can't speak for him.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that's,
Well, I think originally when he cut the trees there with the cutting document, that's when it started that he would plant trees there. Then as this thing went on, I think based upon what you people were saying about the noise and what have you, I think that's where Dennis came up with the thing about putting dirt there and also to prevent someone from falling off the edge.
So just to clarify, so the dirt that's been placed is for safety, not as our buffer?
Both safety, buffer, and noise. Because
We don't know any of that yet, Don.
No, buffer.
it's not gonna do much.
It is not, no, it hasn't done any for that so
But
far.
the main thing was for safety, so someone doesn't fall.
Right.
Because there was a wall talked about too, but that didn't come into the final discussion.
So do we have any idea how long it'll take for legal to at least give us any direction?
We were really hoping to have an answer for this meeting, but it's, again, I think, as everybody's picking up, it's a lot more in-depth than anybody really felt
It's not as
last week.
simple.
And-
No, to be honest, we knew that ahead of time, given that we knew that MASHA, I believe is how you say the acronym, regulates them in the state. So we kind of figured, but we figured you would be our first stop. I was under the impression that today we were going to hear of a potential restoration plan, but that's now on hold because of legal.
I think we need to get our legal footing under us for both parties. We're not trying, the town is impartial in this whole thing. We're doing what's legally correct, is what our end state is. But before we demand anything from anyone or do anything, we want to find out what the law is and what exactly the rules are. And then we can go from there as far as fixing things or not fixing things. It really is contingent on what we hear back.
We do know that Mr. Toromeo had gone to SEC Engineering, I believe, in Plastow, and talked to them about developing plans to put a buffer back there. That was a few weeks ago. That's not going to happen in a week or two.
No, I understand that. I just, again, I know you've heard the audio, but you know, this is our home. We bought where we bought because we moved from the city. We did not want city living. We don't want to look out our kitchen window and see trucks or whatnot. And we've enjoyed our privacy for 11 years, and my neighbors have been there a lot longer. And, you know, we have put up with the sound and the blasting. It is what it is. I get that. I did not have to buy a buddy in a rock quarry, but for a while it was unintrusive. And now it's to the point where I wait until 5 o'clock to go outside because it's very noisy. The noise starts at 6 o'clock in the morning. I can hear them firing up their trucks. And I understand that there isn't going to be a resolution right away. And I appreciate that. I think you appreciate what we're going through. And, you know, thank goodness we don't have to sell our home right now, because I think I would probably be appalled at potentially loss of the value of my home, because again, one of our biggest assets is our privacy, and that has been taken away right now. So, you know, I know my husband and I, we look for a resolution that we can all agree to, but I hope it's not 2-3 years down the line. I would hope for something quick. But I also understand it's getting cold. That's happening too, but again, just don't forget about us.
No.
Who would be in contact with us once a legal determination has been made?
Well, I think you could call the town hall and speak with Susan, and she'll tell you if the attorney's letter is back to us.
Would they come and present, like if the letter, if a decision or they come
Let's
to?
wait. We need to see what we get from them first.
Okay.
Okay, so that and then we can determine from there, invite you to come back and say, this is what we've discovered, invite Mr. Toromeo to come back as well, and sit down as reasonable adults and work this out.
We prefer that
Yeah.
as opposed to just finding out on a whim of just
No.
looking at the site.
No,
Yeah, we appreciate
I don't think anyone's going to leave you hanging on this. I don't think anyone wants to leave this for 2 or 3 years. These things seldom get better with age. And this one specifically, I doubt will get better with age. Unfortunately, I think the window for planting trees is closed. You know, winter's here, we're not there, but
I think we can agree at this point in time. I mean, even unless they're planting 50, 100-foot trees, I don't know if that would be sufficient anyway. I mean, again, kitchen window, I now can see clear through, where for 11 years, I got to enjoy the green of Kingston, and that's gone. So I definitely look forward to hearing back what the lawyers say. Thank you.
Thank you. You have their number too, right? And then Mr. Raphael. You have those two, and I think they want that notify them else.
Hi, my name is Tina.
can you just say your name, please?
Tina Raphael, I'm at 22 Jericho. My question is, who are you getting to legally represent? Can we know that?
Who what?
What is the lawyer? Who are you getting to legally, who are you consulting? Like, I would like to know, who are you consulting about this?
Why?
You say you're getting legal representative.
Why? We work with several attorneys.
Well,
I'm curious as to why you want to know which attorney.
Because I'm just curious, because I don't know if we can contact them, or I'm curious to know if they're, if it's public knowledge, I just am curious to know what lawyers you are getting. You say you're getting legal representation, I believe you, but I'm
So
just
there
curious.
are 2
to
separate
know.
attorneys that we utilize. We have one who deals with land issues, and then we have another firm. So, and I don't think it's proper for you guys to be calling them ex parte with your input on it, given the complications of
I
the,
think to answer your question, the firm's in Manchester. It's not a local attorney.
I'm not saying so I can specifically, but I'm just curious to know. Yeah, I'm just curious to know what law
I
firm.
can't-
Because I would look
I
them
can't
up. I want to see what they
remember.
specialize in. I just want to, you know, you know, you keep mentioning, I just want to know.
Yeah, I
who
know
they are.
that, but it's,
It's an awkward
we have
thing, to be honest.
there's one attorney that we're using for this specifically. It's gonna run into a land use issue as well that we're probably gonna have to consult another attorney on. So I don't want it to be put out that we're telling you one name and then someone else comes in here and you're like, well, you told me this other name. So the one that we're using is Cronin and Bissett out of Manchester. So we're
Cronin
using-
and Bissett?
Yes, that's the firm we're using initially, but then there's also Peter Laughlin, who we consult on land use issues, who will be getting a call on this as well.
He's
I'm
on-
sorry if it seems awkward. I mean, I thought that was just a normal question.
No,
You said
it's
who
not.
we're consulting.
It's actually kind of an odd question.
Oh,
so-
that's the first thought that came to my mind was what
I think the point is, the legal counsel needs to take a look at the law and interpret the law and give us an interpretation, not to feel call from residences to get opinions.
I understand
And
that.
I think we're a little leery on that aspect, because then that's gonna raise up our bill if they get start fielding calls.
Right. No, I understand that. I
Then the
would let
taxes
them do
go
their
up and
job.
you get
I was
mad.
just curious to know who they were. Like, I didn't know if the town
Yeah,
has
no,
someone
no.
specific. That was all. Like, you know, we're talking about what's the town's job, who's this, who does this. So I'm like, oh, the town have their own lawyers. I don't know. So that's the only reason why I asked that.
We learn a lot when we sit on this side of the table.
And the other question was, has there any been talk about the land on the right with all that developing is back, supposedly where he's cleaning up the brush around a pond that's not even there?
That's part of the 200-foot buffer that we talked
Okay.
about. And that's
Okay.
part of what we need the legal opinion on too.
Okay,
The 500 and the 200-foot buffer.
okay. I think I speak for them all when, yes. I know this is not cut and dry, but it's a little unnerving because I don't think he has demonstrated at all any good intention. Even from last week, just coming in here, and you having to practically reach down his throat and pull out the truth from him. So that's why it's really hard, you know, even if he had come in and been like, you know, like I said, we never complain, we are willing. But he has not shown any good intention. If anything, he's done the opposite. So it's very hard to take face value anything he says. We don't anymore. I don't. We don't take face value what he says anymore. He's proven to be untrustworthy.
Well,
So-
I feel compelled to speak on Mr. Tormeier's behalf. He's been a good neighbor to the town of Kingston for many, many years. And maybe this incident is more contentious, if you will, but he's done a lot of good things for the town over the years.
Perhaps.
So,
But he, with this particular issue, he has not shown good intention.
I
If
have-
anything, he's done the opposite, and that can't be denied. And I've been his neighbor 26 years, and I have not had a complaint with him. And that's why I did call him first, and we spoke. I called him 3 times. He was very kind. I found out he knows a family member, but he lied to me. So this is why, you know, we were giving him chances. So I understand, like I said, we've been there longer than anybody. And other than doing the big blast that he shouldn't be doing, but this is something different. So, you know, I understand he's been a good neighbor up until now. And he hasn't even shown at this point, other than coming here last week and not telling the truth. So he hasn't shown any goodwill towards this at all. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. When we hear something, we will pass word along and we'll set up an appointment to let everybody know what's going on. And hopefully it's not 2 or 3 years. That's a joke.
So as of now, there's no more blasting in back of my house.
They have agreed to not do any blasting on the north wall, which is directly behind your property, correct?
Okay.
Is that correct? Okay. Thank you, everybody. The public right-of-way ordinance, you did not hear anything from Sumner on that for the second week in a row?
Yeah.
You just not want to weigh in on someone else's work, or?
I don't know if he didn't say anything, so I'll give him another nudge, and if nobody else I know, Don had one issue to make sure that.
Yeah, they want to know if there's any other regulations ordinances that.
Put it on next week's agenda, but give him a call and say, you missed it. Tell him to-
We regulate.
Busy, I called the other
And
day.
they have to go on the road, all that kind of stuff. That's part of our regulation, it needs to be, that document you sent to us.
Yeah,
That's,
initially they asked me, we have this ordinance, do we have that? I looked them up, I sent them what we have. I don't know if that's included in that or not, so.
Yeah, it's online, Kevin, it's on the website, they can go get more copies off the website.
so, I would send that document to them.
Yeah, one second. I'm gonna turn this thing off so I nobody's on Zoom, but.
Oh, I was gonna say, as you were doing that, I was like, oh, I need to check. The Zoom
No,
crowd,
nobody-
who's never had a public comment the whole time we've been doing it.
They're two separate.
Okay, all right, so we'll give him one more week and then we'll proceed on that.
On the right away, yeah.
Yes.
I'll call him again tomorrow.
New Hampshire DOT Route 125 project, crosswalk at New Junction at
We
Bayberry.
decided that last week too.
You wanted to talk to
Do
Rich?
it.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Susan.
we did talk to Rich, and Rich said, "Don't no way, Jose." Because he doesn't want to there's no reason to maintain it, because there's no real need for crosswalks there.
I really don't blame him in
So
this case.
scrub it.
I'm sure they'll be doing a full depth replacement by the time we need to enact that, so.
So if the board doesn't feel, just.
Okay, so just to make this official, can we get a motion on that?
Motion to scrub the 125 crossing at Hunt Road.
Second,
Okay, a motion and a second. Further discussion? Hearing none. Roll call vote, please.
Alessio?
yes.
Briggs?
Yes.
Coombs?
Yes.
St. James?
Yes.
Wilson?
Yes.
Another issue that came up was school building electrical plumbing permit fees. I know we've discussed this 3 times. Another thing that we need to have in a motion so Susan can reference it and not call me when she has a question about it. No offense to Susan, I'm sick of answering the question because I don't know the answer.
Well, they
Because it
agreed,
changes.
they agreed to pay.
We had the big project, right, and we were, decided that the plumbing and electrical should be paid for, where we had waived them all, so now we're like,
Plumbing
I thought we
and,
said building.
I move that plumbing and electrical fees, permit fees, be applied to all comers.
Yes, we did say that.
yeah, and that's
No,
what I.
We did, we
Yeah,
did.
I wanted to go back and vote, but Tori wasn't sure, and I thought, okay.
Just,
I just wanted
Well, I
to.
think, well, let me, that was for the purpose of that build-up.
That was one
But-
specific time.
For,
Yeah.
for one project.
But going forward, we're gonna charge electrical and plumbing fees because they get paid by the inspection.
Correct.
So that's different than someone on board as a stipend, different. So regardless of whether the school, or you, or me, or Joe Q Public,
Those always
permit
have to-
and electrical, plumbing and electrical fees will be
Yes.
paid. Permit fees will be paid.
Yeah.
Okay.
We agreed on that.
Further discussion?
We do.
Well, I don't know if it's on the new bit, but I'm just curious where we ended up, because we were looking, gonna change the fees for those as well. Not for the school, that this is on the school, but for, we're gonna get a whole new permitting.
That's a whole nother issue, but as
Yeah.
we know, we're gonna charge for these two
Yeah,
regardless.
no, but I was just asking him for an update on that.
Yeah, so,
Let's finish this.
And we may need fees for stormwater runoffs. I mean, it's
Yeah.
not just these two things.
so I will touch that as soon as we get this vote taken care of. All right, roll call vote, please. So the motion was, all plumbing and electrical fees, regardless of who it is paid.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Yes,
Alessio?
yes.
Briggs?
Yes.
Coombs?
Yes.
St. James?
Yes.
And Wilson?
Yes.
Put it on a plaque and put it in the office.
We also have,
That doesn't mean someone's not gonna ask us to have something waived down the road, but as a rule, this is the normal rule.
Well, the problem was, yeah, because I knew about that one project. This is not included in that project. And the person came in and said, no, you don't charge the school. And Tori wasn't there. I couldn't remember, so, you know, but
It's a matter of record now.
now we got it.
Okay.
we also have a new Supreme Court justice.
Oh, that's it?
Okay, so the sip and sign at the rec department, did you have any
we did that last week. We said that we were gonna let them do that based on them contacting Don and going through the proper procedures.
And so I'll call the insurance carrier to let them know.
Okay. And the health inspector signed off on that?
I haven't seen it yet.
I don't know.
Susan, did you talk to the health inspector about that?
I did not.
Add that to your list.
Okay.
Tell Peter to take a look. It should be no problem, but I don't want to see it again.
And I think it was contingent upon his approval as well.
Yeah.
So
That one
Don
was-
said,
Yeah, they can have alcohol, so just want to be sure.
all
They're
right.
bringing their own, remember?
Yeah.
That brings us to committee liaison report. So the permit process, what I'm trying to do is do a full analysis of this, take everything into account, because there's no point in changing the fees if we're not changing the whole structure. There are about 30 different permits I'm going through. And so I really haven't involved, I've had one-on-ones with a lot of the different inspectors and Tori and everyone, just trying to get their input, and then just taking all of those into making it a lot more user-friendly and on both ends, for the customer and the inspectors. It's my busy season, so there will be no action on that from me until probably mid-December. Until Thanksgiving, I'm pretty swamped, so,
And that's not that far away, so I
I can
No,
promise that to the board by
we talked about it,
December.
and-
Yeah. No, there's just, it's one of those, it's like getting into an old house and you're like, you know what, I'm just gonna paint that ceiling, and then all of a sudden it starts chipping, and then the drywall comes down, and then the electrical's bad, and. So, I'm trying to fix the whole thing at once, not the whole thing, but at least address the multiple issues that there are that are being brought to our attention as we go through too. So, one of the things that's gonna take place with that is, as I get that kind of drilled down, is we'll be going back to an every week meeting with the inspectors, just to get everybody's input in on that, and getting them blessing off on it before I bring it to this board. What I'm planning on bringing to the board is just a series of recommendations for us to go through, and then the board can decide what they want to take up and what they don't want to take up, and we can go from there.
You need help, yell. You
What's
need
that?
help, yell.
Okay.
And I may start attending those Thursday meetings just so if anything changes next year, we know what's going on.
I was going to add that impact fees. I was thinking of that stormwater, since we've got, assuming that the company that shall not be named comes into town, and I expect they probably will, and never mind any other developments in the north end of town. Do we want to have impact fees for stormwater renewals, testing and
I don't think we
renewability?
can. We've already talked about that.
We cannot? Okay.
I thought legal said
Yeah.
library, fire department.
But the flip side of that is,
Maybe not
When-
an impact fee, right?
it doesn't have to be an impact
Subcommittee
fee.
working on this, so
Yeah,
I
I
don't
would-
want to go into much at this point. I mean,
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
As long as it's on the radar, I just bring
No,
it up for that
the
reason.
Glens and Rich are working through that.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
all right, we covered the health plans. You
Yeah.
came in at the tail end of that. Did you catch that?
No,
So basically, we're gonna disperse that out to the department heads. We have a potential savings of $50,000 on a new plan. But what, they've given us
company or new plan?
new plan with a new company.
Which company?
NHT instead of Primex, or net Primex.
Health Trust.
Thank you.
Yes. So they've given us a side-by-side comparison between our existing plan and the new one. And what we wanted to do was just send that out to the department heads. They could review it, and they're gonna be aware of who they have for employees who might be adversely affected by it.
Okay.
And so there's
I think it's a good idea. No,
Doctors,
I think it's
everybody,
a good idea.
but I think 50 grand is something that we really can't overlook. So it's worth looking at. I'm sorry, back to committee liaison reports. Skipped on that.
I'm all set. I think everybody knows what's going on with the planning board. Book committee, I covered last week.
Yep.
Fire department, all going okay. Greg did call me that he's not gonna spend his whole line, but he had 3 sets of gear that was expired, so he had to buy 3 gears, but he has plenty of money in the budget. He doesn't know if he'll be able to return 10%, but he's gonna be pretty close to 10% of his budget.
Are they people who show up?
Yeah, yes. The budget, we've got to be meeting in a couple of weeks. I worked with the fire department, everyone individually handed it to their liaison, so I'm going to get in touch with all of you once I start looking at the budget to see what we have questions so that I can answer them at the budget committee, because I did get a call from the chairman. He was concerned because just looking at the preliminaries, they're already over 4%, over last year, so.
Well, it is 4%, not over. He said it's about 4%, which is not out of whack given all the raises. But I think as a board, I'd like us to review it as a whole, because there were some blanks. We hadn't updated the numbers because we didn't have the insurance stuff, and Cindy wasn't sure what we wanted to do. So it would be a good idea to have a new, an updated proposal,
Yeah.
see what we need to kind of address. And maybe the 4% is not unreasonable, because that's what I want to know, what the revenue side is that offsets, so that it's not a 4% increase. We are authorized to expend 4%, but it may only be a 2 when you look at the revenue side of the ballgame.
I explained that, the salaries was a big jump, and no one can absorb, they're not gonna be able to lower their budget and increase their salary and get it. Okay, so I explained that, but he just asked for concern, so I haven't had a chance to pull the numbers and start looking at it. But I agree, I think maybe the board should look at it as a whole, if we wanna set it for next meeting, something.
Maybe because I'm the rookie, I don't.
It's a good idea, because that way when we go in for our meeting, we're not surprised with some of the figures like we were last year.
I didn't know that, but no, we shouldn't be surprised.
So how about if next week we have that,
Have a discussion? I'd like to have an easier meeting next Monday night, because we're gonna have a very long day at the polls on Tuesday. And some of us will be at the polls and working the absentee ballots this Friday. So I'd like a light meeting next Monday.
So why don't we not have a meeting next Monday, because we are gonna be very busy.
I won't object to
I
that.
wouldn't either.
Yeah, I think,
Tuesday's a very long day.
yes.
do we have anything to clear?
$80 that day.
I did have one person that wanted to come in, but I can move them to the following week.
Okay.
It was the issue of imminent danger, or,
Charlie Hennigan would like to come back.
oh, not next week, I'm not, no.
That could get convoluted.
No,
Who was it?
Charlie Hannigan.
Well, if you could contact Mr. Hannigan and let him know that because of the election and our participation in it,
Okay. You should understand.
we would prefer to be the next week.
We probably won't get a thing back from the attorney till next week sometime anyway on this Memorial Day, I would guess.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have to see where that goes. I would propose that we meet at 6 o'clock though the following Monday, so we have a blocked out time to discuss just the budget. So the meeting will start at 6. It's not a non-public one, it's just a review.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The cameras will be rolling at 6, but we won't take appointments right away.
right, we could do
Start at
that.
6.
Yeah,
Does that work for everybody?
yep.
Just kinda hoping Charlie would come soon.
I'm gonna deck you one.
Okay.
I got a couple things. We have, I talked with Tammy earlier today, and when an employee, a town employee, has a medical issue that has recently been discovered, so she's gonna be taking some time out after the election. But Tammy may need some extra help in there to get the tax bills out, and if there's no objection, I know she's had Jen Hart come in to do some extra work, and she will need some extra pair of hands. They've been swamped, and they'll be busy right through next Tuesday, but it's a 2-week turnaround for the tax bills. So unless there's any objection, I'm gonna tell her it's okay to bring some extra help to fill in. Well,
didn't she have a person in mind to start training?
yeah, Kim is coming in, but she's still working full-time in her regular job because her husband got laid off. I mean, it's a long story, but, so she's only available part-time, but we still want to be sure that we don't drop those tax bills.
Okay. No, I don't want
We need to make sure that they get out.
I think they've been, I just want to say, they've been doing an amazing job down there. I see how busy they are, and they've been above and beyond on all of it, and I hats off to them.
Yeah,
All the
I'll be sure to tell
ballots
them.
going out and coming in.
Yes.
It's unbelievable, and we're meeting this, we're getting together 12:30 this Friday to pre-process the ballots like we did for the primary the day before. We did that on Sunday, but they get, what, 800 ballots, absentee ballots so far? It's gonna take some time. Rich had mentioned something to me about when they did the regular fall cleanup at the town dump. He said that he's gonna look into this, there's some issues with the landfill cover and drainage on this drainage swale. So he was gonna get back to us with some cost to fix them.
So I ran into Rich when they were cutting trees down over there, and I followed up with him on that.
Oh, okay,
I guess it wasn't as major as he initially thought.
okay,
So he is going to be able to self-perform most of the work
okay.
with his guys and the equipment that we've purchased from the dump fund. I do think that's an issue that requires some conversation, though. The dump as a whole.
Okay.
You know, in our conversations when he brought the engineering firm here, you know, this is an unlined landfill that has a body of water running right next to it. I happen to be a downstream resident, so it's a particular concern to me that I don't want PCBs and whatever else leaching out of there. So I wanted to propose to the town, right now the town pays to have someone come in and trap. A lot of this damage is done from coyotes digging for things into the landfill, and then what happens is it rains and it's just soil on top of a tarp, and it starts sliding off. At a minimum, I'd like to offer to the town, you know, some trapping services that I would do free of charge in that area to keep an eye on it. But I think as a whole, we need to look at how we're managing that entire thing, you know, the plan for that going forward. Because I think it's one of those things that Rich has done, and none of this is meant as a knock on Rich. I think, you know, we haven't really given him any guidance, and I think we need to start developing some guidance there, because if that water level went up 2 feet, we would have major problems. Like if a beaver dam was put there, and it happens quick on that river, you know, whatever is in that unlined landfill all of a sudden is underwater, and it's going to leach out. You know, the coyotes getting in, there's a lot of fence areas where they're getting in at. And I think we should involve Rich in that discussion, so I don't want to get into all of it tonight, but
If we need to spend money, we need to figure that out before everybody else spends all the money.
Well, don't we have a separate fund for the maintenance
Yes,
of the
we
dump?
do, but it may take more than that.
Well,
if we got into where there was leaching out of there,
You can eat it
it
up.
would be 30 to 40 million dollars. That would not even be a drop in the bucket of what we would have to do to
No
rectify
kidding.
that. And that is discussions I've had with 2 people who had kind of different perspectives on what would have to be done, but none of them are cheap for the town of Kingston.
Okay,
So, again, I think we've done an admirable job up to this point managing it, but I think we need to have a long-term future plan. I know there's been discussions about solar up there and whatever it may be, I think we just need to plan for it going forward. And again, I don't want to get into it tonight, but I just want to get it on everybody's radar that that's something we should be involving Rich and the engineering firm and just kind of plan out what we want to do. But
Did we talk to Rich about the Sands Lane property?
I did, and he actually ran into Phil on that too. He wanted Dennis Quintel to demarc, you know, exactly where the line was for our land.
Has anybody called?
Susan called me actually, right? I didn't subvert you on that one.
Has anybody called Dennis to tell him that?
Yeah, he just needed authority to retain Dennis. I gave him the permission
Right.
because I contacted the board.
They're already starting to put boats there.
Well, that's what I was concerned, yeah.
Yeah.
Told me to put him with Kevin Jack.
Yeah, there you go. I'll take them, my guy, if you want to pay me.
I'll take them for the rent.
Was that all you had?
That's all, that's enough, isn't it, for
Okay.
tonight?
I'll entertain a motion on the minutes.
Move to accept as printed?
Second.
Okay, got a motion and a second. Further discussion?
Roll call or?
Sure.
Yes.
Alessio?
Yes.
Briggs?
Yes.
Coombs?
Yes.
St. James?
I'll abstain.
Abstain, Wilson.
Yes.
Okay, I know I have one non-public issue for discussion with council that I had last week.
Okay.
For the good of the board. So I make a motion, we move to non-public session per RSA 91-A semicolon 3.
Second.
Alessio?
Yep.
Briggs?
Yes.
Coombs?
Yes.
St. James?
Yes.
Wilson?
Yes.
All right, non-public.
Okay, that will conclude the public portion of this evening's meeting. Thank you for joining us, and we will not be meeting next week, Monday night next week, and then Tuesday, the town hall offices will be closed for voting over at the Swayze Gym.
Don't forget to vote.
Don't forget to vote.
Early
Thank you.
and often.